Let's call the committee of the whole to order. Tuesday, the 14th of June, 2005. Councilman Lawson is present. Councilman Hodge, Councilman Porter present. Item 1 on the agenda is the approval of May the 24th minutes, 2005. Is there a motion for approval?
Move approval, Mayor.
Moved by Mr. Porter. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Hodge. Any questions on the minutes? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item 2B is a discussion on Chapter 30 zoning PUD ordinance.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Council, at this point I'll turn it over to Rick Chandra, who has been working this action for the city.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I hope you can hear me from this mic. I moved over here because last time, does this seem better?
Yeah.
Good, as far as sound's concerned. What you have in front of you is really the same package that you saw on the 6th. This will hopefully during the week you've had a chance to take a look at it. We'll bring up some specific high points or points of contention that were brought up by council before and tell you where it is at this point in time in the ordinance. I want to bring your attention really to 3 other pieces of paper that you may or may not have. The first one is the memo from P&Z of June 6th, which was a handout last time. It's in your package this time. It's one of the items we need to discuss in the early part. Another memo was given to me this morning, and I believe they have this from Ms. Garner? Okay. Which lists at least her comments on the PUD code since she has been involved with us on it from the beginning. And the third thing that you do not have at this point, and if you would like, I can give it to you. If you don't, we won't. We made a summary of the items that were brought up by council at not so much Monday, but the prior version and where they are in there. That may help you to find where we're talking about. And if Sheila can pass it out, at least it gives a starting point. I realize we can go soup to nuts with this thing, wherever you want to go with it, but this at least hit the points that we've talked about in the past. It may make it go quicker, it may not, but we can start with that, if that's amenable to everybody.
Your Honor, if I may ask a question.
Mr. Williams?
Yes, our attorney, Dick Coker, is en route, but has not yet arrived. And I wonder if this item could be put off until he gets here. There are quite a few people here in the audience that may be here for other items. Might serve to address their concerns first. We're really not prepared to discuss it without Dick Coker being here.
Any objections from any council member that we defer it until Mr. Coker arrives?
No objections, Your Honor.
Any objections?
No, sir.
Well, let's move on. There's some items we probably need to take up. There's some other important matters later on. If we could discuss if there's no objections, let's go to the election issue, and then we'll follow back up with the KG issue. So let's go to, if there's no objections, Madam Clerk, let's talk next about the election issue, and then we go back then to item F. Okay?
Mr. Mayor, if I could start off on this item. The legislature had enacted legislation which provided for an early voting period. And in that legislation, which was 2004, the issue as to whether it applied to municipalities was not clear. And so this ordinance, the first thing it does is for the period from now until January 1st, 2005, has the city opting out of the 15-day early voting period provided for by state law. and has the council setting up its own early voting period of a few days prior to the election. In order to, I'm advised by the clerk that there's a substantial money savings to doing that. The second thing the ordinance does is that with respect to, it also allows the council on a case-by-case basis to vary that period of time if they feel like there's a particular need to either have a longer early voting period or a shorter early voting period, or to vary the days. And the second thing, the legislature realized in this past session of the legislature that there was an ambiguity in the law, and so the ordinance also covers the period after January 1st, 2006, and sets forth the early voting period for that period as well.
Any comments from council?
I have some questions. You were referring to option number 2, Richard?
I'm not recommending any particular option.
Okay.
What I'm doing is...
let me tell you what I think I understand, and you tell me if I'm understanding it correctly. Option number 1, we would have 2 separate voting positions. In other words, the county would have their machines, the city of Homestead would have their machines. If someone comes into the polling booth, they would have to be instructed by the poll workers that you're not finished yet, you need to go over here. Right. Correct? Correct.
What happened is, because of the way our charter is set up and the way that the county system works, there is not enough time between our October 4th primary, which is currently set, and the November 1st general election for the county to put all of our information into their machines. So basically it would be conducted within the same voting place, but there would be, as you described, 2 separate booths. You wouldn't have to wait online twice. You would just move from one to the other, and that's so because of the fact that the county does not have enough time to reprogram its machines to get ready for the November 1st election.
But let me go on then, and then in option number 2, if we changed it where we had the primary on September 6th rather than October 4th, then that would give them enough time to put both county and city issues on the same ballot.
Exactly.
But then you have a primary that lasts 2 months, over 2 months.
Correct.
It almost kills you in 30 days, 60 days it'd be. But yet that's the cost saving factor, correct?
Correct. Correct. And the clerk could speak to that. But the option 2.
And option 3 you can't even consider because we know that they're going to have the county's going to have their issue.
Right. Right. The option 2 would be if somehow or another, when they counted the signatures on the strong mayor proposal, somehow they didn't have enough signatures, so there would be no election. There's a process where they submit the signatures and those get reviewed. But option 3 really deals with what would happen if there was no countywide election at the same time as our elections.
I mean, what do other municipalities normally, I don't know who to address the question to, what do other municipalities?
Well, I can just tell you that with respect to the early voting period, I know that...
You're saying the option number 2?
What they've done is they've done some variation of option number 2, which is they basically have shortened the early voting period, and they don't use the full 15 days that are allowed under state law. And if you adopt number 2, then the county would have enough time to get all the information on the same ballot. It's probably the least confusing, option 2, but politically I don't know how that, whether it's fair.
It's just a very long time.
Yes. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Long?
Well, and of course, I guess to avoid real confusion, since it's pretty certain there's going to be a county-wide election, we have to go with option 2. My concern is, historically, people just don't go out and vote in early September now, because normally that's right after school starts, and granted this school year starts early, but what's this, the Tuesday after Labor Day?
It's terrible.
That's impossible. It's really, I want to use the word undemocratic. It really is. But in order to avoid real issues with residents coming in and having to vote twice, it looks like we're put into into that corner, unless the number of people who qualify to be elected in the Homestead election do not trigger a primary.
And I don't think you can count on that.
But there's always that remote possibility that there would be no primary and we would fall in line with the general November election. But, and refresh my memory, by charter, are we locked into to an October primary?
By charter and code.
We don't have the ability to vary the charter by action of this council, and certainly there's not enough time to have a referendum on that. We are locked into an October primary.
So it has to be option one.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm glad you remembered that. That answers that question.
Yeah.
No,
So option one would be the...
I'll just check to see whether that's in
I think we spelled that out in the charter change for designating primary day, I thought.
Very clearly, I think it
But I think that was some of the cleanup at the attorney's office,
Yeah.
which is fine, that it made sense at the time, because to me, a September election to me makes no sense whatsoever.
First Tuesday in October
First Tuesday.
is specified in the charter.
Yeah, we're locked into that. Now, we are not required to have any early voting. That's correct?
Actually, if you pass this ordinance, which opts out of the statewide early voting, you are not required.
Then later we can determine.
What this ordinance does is opts out of the statewide early voting
But does not set.
provides for City of Homestead early voting, which we provided for on Saturday and Sunday immediately before the mayoral council election. You could change that.
Yeah, that wasn't in the packet.
Yes, it's under B. It's in the ordinance
under
that
tab
the clerk
13, Steve.
distributed by email.
My tab 13 only has the
Right,
memorandum.
but the clerk has advised me that she distributed the ordinance by email.
I would certainly object to any Sunday voting. I would think that if we're going to have early voting, it should be after hours, maybe the Thursday and Friday, the week before. I just have a real fundamental problem with Sunday voting, early voting. Not just from a historical perspective, but the burden on our staff to come in and do that on a weekend and maintain this building in an open situation. Thank you. Okay. Do we have enough time, Richard, to opt out of the early voting and come back later and establish our own early voting schedule?
The way we've set this up is the ordinance itself, and you could change, this is not a first reading, but you could direct us to change it for first reading. The ordinance itself opts out of the state early voting and creates 2 early voting days for the City of Homestead. It could be 3, it could be 1, you can vary the days of it, but that's what the ordinance, and also to give some flexibility on a particular election, even if you adopt this ordinance, which we think you should do, because 15 days, well, it's up to you, but most of our small cities don't.
Oh, certainly we need to opt out of that.
Right, and that way, and you could put in whatever early voting requirements you like into the ordinance.
All right, let me ask you this, Richard. Maybe the last few years since the phasing in of the touchscreen machines, we've had what's always been commonly referred to as in-person absentee voting here at City Hall. Has that in effect been what's now been codified as early voting?
No, I mean, in person, in other words, the absentee process, you have a absentee ballot, that's a whole process, we're not disturbing at all.
I understand that, but we've been calling the ability to come to City Hall and use a touchscreen machine prior to the election absentee voting.
No,
and that's something that came in with the touchscreens in whenever it was, 2000.
Let me suggest that we opt out of the state requirement, and before we have first reading, let's put it back on the committee to hold. Do we have time to do that, Richard?
Well, I think what you should do
is, then allow the council to...
Is the only issue the type of early, is the issue how much early voting?
How much,
My suggestion is that this go on the next council agenda, because we need to get it into play for first reading.
Okay.
And we'll leave it the way it is, but on first reading, if you want to change that paragraph in any way, there's no problem with doing that.
Okay.
All right. So we'll just move it ahead to the council agenda, and look at it, give us a call the clerk, and you can look at also the financial issues involved.
But it's clear.
Let me ask that you all think about dates so we could talk about it.
Let's look at the actual calendar and really get a handle on that.
Yeah, we get a handle on it. Okay. Is there a motion for first reading?
I'll make
Is there a motion for approval?
Just to move it forward.
Move it to the next council meeting.
So moved, Mayor.
Moved by Councilman Wallman, second by Councilman Losner. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Let's go to item F2F on KG Communications Cable License Agreement and Resolution, and that's under tab 6.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Council, there's a proposed resolution that would approve a cable license agreement between the city and KG Communications, LLC, to allow KG to install, maintain, and operate a cable system in the city. Approval of the license agreement will increase the revenue the city obtains from the Florida Department. They centrally tax communications service tax, but we get a portion of that, and they would increase our portion of that tax that's returned to us pursuant to the Florida Communications Service Tax, and promote competition for cable services in the city. Again, we have two other cable companies in the city. We have Adelphia, which is being in the process of being purchased by Comcast. And so we'll be dealing with Adelphia right now, but we'll be dealing with Comcast in the not too distant future. We have STI, which has a franchise or license agreement with us as well, that really right now services mostly only the Lennar home area in some kind of a bulk arrangement for providing cable services with Lennar. We had a listing of, I guess, some of the important elements here. The length of the license would be 10 years, going through June 30th, 2015. The license agreement is non-exclusive. The license, the service area and build-out requirement, the license area is the entire city. However, KG has a limited service area of the city described in the license agreement, and they have a map attached, which takes in the Keysgate area, generally speaking, the Keysgate area, and up northward to take in just by the hospital and just west of the Turnpike area. And generically speaking, but the exact map is the yellow tab. Again, we have a 10-year agreement. There are some minimums, and I've got Scott here who negotiated on this contract, worked on this contract, that can explain a lot of the elements. But again, Scott, if you'd like to go into the operation of within the 10 years and how many it escalates and how many units they're supposed to have, some of those elements to the contract.
I don't know if you've met Scott, but Scott's from our office.
Yeah.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, Vice Mayor, City Attorney, City Manager. Basically, to reiterate what the City Manager just said, it's the length of the license is 10 years, commencing July 1st, 2005, expiring July 1st, 2015, or excuse me, June 30th, 2015. There is a build-out requirement that they're supposed to provide services to 3,000 homes within 1 year of the effective date of the agreement, and over the 10-year term, they're supposed to provide services to over 6,000 homes over the 10-year term. The city, the KG may apply to the city to extend its service area beyond the boundaries. I've prepared a map of the service area. If I may just bring it up and show the council.
I just wanted to go ahead and show the council something that the Homestead benefits from that not a lot of other municipalities benefits. We have 3 cable operators provide with this agreement. In the past, we have 3 cable operators operating the state. And if you look at this map, the pink area denotes the area that's going to be KG is going to provide service. In this area, as described by the city manager, and the area in black is the area that is currently licensed to STI. Adelphia has the entire city. So what you can see is that the residents, or most of the residents in the city, actually have a cable operator to choose from. In a lot of municipalities in South Florida, unfortunately, there's only one cable operator licensed to provide services in that municipality. But based on this service area and based on the other operators in the city, there is competition in the city of Homestead. And I can show this map to the residents as well. And I'll go on with the other issues.
What will be the average cost per customer with this?
Average cost per customer.
You have to clarify the average cost. Talking about prices or?
Yeah, but if I'm taking advantage of your service.
I would suggest, Mr. Mayor, that you ask the applicant. You know, I'm always concerned about it appearing as if we're advocating this agreement. There's an applicant here who has applied to the city for this.
Representatives from KG Communications are here if you want to address them on any issues.
Okay, good, thank you. Proceed, I'll ask.
Okay. KG has agreed to provide a state-of-the-art system, 860 megahertz, which is considered state-of-the-art in the cable industry. And they have to offer new and advanced services if any of those services are offered over their cable system anywhere else in Florida. They're going to provide free cable services and high-speed internet services to the schools and the government facilities within their service area. They're going to be paying, as the city manager stated earlier, the communication services tax to the city. The local portion is also a state portion as well. They're going to provide one access channel for the city's exclusive use for programming to cablecast the city council meetings over the cable system within a year of the effective date of the agreement. KG is also going to pay the city $200,000 over the 10-year term of the agreement, $50,000 upon 30 days of execution of the agreement after the city adopts the resolution approving the agreement, another $100,000 by June 30th, 2007, and another $50,000 by June 30th, 2009 to support access programming. In addition to that, they're going to be paying $2 per subscriber on an annual basis commencing April. The first payment will be April 2007. So for each subscriber that they have by December 31st of the prior year, they're going to be remitting $2 per sub to the city. So that's additional money that the city is going to see for access channel programming to support any additional program they want to put on their government channel or their educational channels. In terms of cost recovery, they paid a $15,000 application fee. Any additional amount or cost incurred related to this agreement, they've agreed to pay upon invoice sent to them within 30 days of receipt, and they're going to provide they're going to comply with all the customer service obligations in the ordinance. They're also going to provide bonds, security bond, and also construction bond, provide insurance and indemnification, and pursuant to the ordinance, and the city manager is going to be able to enforce this agreement as well, pursuant to the license agreement.
May I ask a question? Mayor, may I ask a question while you're there? I just want to make sure that everyone understands that they have a certain area, correct? There are boundaries.
Yes.
However, am I right in saying that just because you live in that boundary, if you still wanted to use Adelphi cable, you still could do that?
Yes, Adelphi is licensed citywide, and they provide services citywide. And they have approximately 3,500 subs right now. If you live in that area, in actuality, if you live in the area with STI, KG, and Adelphia, you can get services from any of the three providers pursuant to what their contracts say and where their systems lie.
So the way I look at it is, Adelphi cable's been bought by Comcast, right?
They've actually, effectively today, they've applied to transfer the cable license system. They've actually dropped off their application today.
So more than likely, that's going to happen.
More than likely.
we think it's going to happen. And then, you know, to me, this is just offering a different alternative. I mean, it's just consumer. It's good for the consumer. It's good for the city. I mean, people can choose what they want to choose. I don't see that there's a problem. Or is there a problem? I know. Adelphi
We're going to
Cable.
hear a problem, and I think maybe.
But doesn't Adelphi Cable still owe us money?
Oh, yes, and
Yeah.
in our meeting today, before we agree to the turnover, we've got 30 days now that they've given us their notice that Comcast is going to take over Adelphia. We have 30 days to comment on that, and we explained to them in the comment that we're going to need to clear up the issues, and that's what we'll put in our 30 days.
Yeah, it's a separate issue, but under the transfer process, according to the Cable Act, once a cable operator submits an application to transfer its cable system, the city has 120 days to approve that application. Within the first 30 days, we can request additional information. And in our meeting earlier, between the city manager, myself, and the transferees and Adelphia, we did state that there would be some issues we would require clarification within that first 30 days, so that is something that we are going to be moving forward as of today, since they dropped off their official transfer application.
But my last question is, don't most municipalities have a choice?
Yes, and again, you read in there, it's a non-exclusive.
Exactly.
But I think there's an issue, and it really is in the Keysgate area right now, that I think where you may be hearing some questions as to having the choice, and I think it's the use of the facilities potentially, because I think that, and you can anybody correct me if I misspeak here, and I think there's some people that are questioning this, but there was a bulk agreement when you moved into Keysgate that part of you got a certain rate, and they got it on a bulk from Adelphia Cable, and you paid that rate. Now that contract is being severed with Keysgate. KG is going to come in that area. What I don't know, and is really not the city's battle, it'll be between KG and Adelphia on the facilities of which they transmit the signals over. Now, when we talk about exclusive within, non-exclusive in the city, anybody can put in their cable system next to somebody else's cable system and come in and offer cable. But I think in their case, it may be that there's a discussion over the existing cable infrastructure already in the ground there, and who uses it based on who owns it and who has the right to reassign it to someone else. And I think there's a difference or an issue between KG, who would be coming in, or looks like would be coming into that area, versus Adelphia, remaining there and being able to still offer services on whose ownership of that infrastructure. So somebody's going to use that infrastructure, whether it ends up being Adelphia or a KG. I don't know which.
They both can't use it?
The representatives from KG Communications can explain more in detail as to what they intend to do with the infrastructure that's there, or building out their build down.
Yeah, clearly I wanted to just make the point.
Are they here? Could we get...
Yes, they are.
They can come forward and explain. I just want to say, really, the city is not a party to either one of those. I mean, we're just given a franchise agreement, and I want people to understand that. The difference between, the disagreement or the issue that they're having is between those two parties. We're simply issuing another franchise, a non-exclusive franchise or license agreement to another cable company. Name and number right there at the podium, sir. Yeah.
Dave Beal.
Address?
59, Venice, Florida.
I think the question was if you could elaborate a little bit on the use, because we have had some concern about options to be able to, which cable you'd be able to use, or in the Keysgate area, and probably that area you're concerned with.
The previous contract between...
Could you identify, Venice, Florida, do you represent somebody?
Yes.
Could you tell us who
the developer, I represent KG Communications.
Okay, and we need a full address, not Venice, Florida, please.
596 Mossy Creek Drive, Venice, Florida.
Thank you.
The issue between ourselves and Adelphia goes back to the original contract signed in 1987, and that contract stipulated that at the end of the contract Adelphia had 90 days to either remove their cable or abandon it. Except in the case of a default, and we claim, and I won't go into all the particulars unless would like me to, it's a long, long story, that they defaulted on the contract last year. In that case, we have the right to immediately take over their cable. The real issue is we've offered to buy it from them. We've offered to work any kind of a deal, and I've had several deals with them where I thought it was over, and they then changed their mind. And all we've asked them to do is tell us what your plan is. We are fully prepared to go in and re-cable the entire Keysgate subdivision, or subdivisions, if that's required, but it's senseless in the sense that we're going to rip up everybody's yard, and now sure it'll all be put back, but that'll take time. Well, all we've asked for in all our suit is, and we have a long-standing suit which is going to be settled on July 6th, is tell us what your plan is. What are you going to do here? And then we'll know what to do and we'll react accordingly. At the moment, like I said, all that's happening is that each side is preparing for trial. We go through depositions next week, and the trial is set in bankruptcy court in New York on July 6th. And our position remains the same. Please tell us what you want to do, and we'll go from there. Their position, so everybody knows, is, and it's complicated again because there's federal law, there's FCC rulings, and there's Florida state law, then they don't agree. And their position is that the FCC gives them the right in a public dedicated easement to remain there. We have already told them we are not interested in your backbone, so whatever, and the backbone would mean, let's assume for a minute that they're at one end of Keysgate and they have somebody outside of Keysgate and they need to get through Keysgate, like kind of connecting the dots. We said, we'll give you that. That's not the issue. We don't want to be ripping up all of our residents' yards any more than we have to. Their position, as I said, is that the rules say that they can be there. We're saying, first of all, you signed that away in 1987. You then defaulted on the contract, and you really don't have any choice.
Can I interrupt you for a minute?
Yes.
You shared with us that this is a legal matter between KG and Adelphia.
Yes.
And hopefully it'll be settled on July the 6th.
Yes.
So we're not going to be able to get any definitive statement or solve the problem here at this meeting. So unless someone have any questions about the franchise agreement, we need to move on, okay?
Right.
Is there any comments?
We have questions. Go up to the podium.
Is it questions about the franchise agreement or questions about the ownership of the...
John Burgess, 655 Southeast 30th Drive, Homestead, Florida. We've got questions as residents over there. They are representing themselves here tonight as K&G Communications, but to the associations and the residents over there, they come across, K&G has never been mentioned unless you dig down into the records and the paperwork and find stuff. They come across as DCN. So as a neighborhood over there, we've got a concern that that there's two entities, but when we have a problem, who do we go to? So we think that they need to do some work and get consolidated and become one company. You're going to issue a franchise to somebody, yet we're being told that somebody else is actually the company that's going to come in and give us the cable. And we've got other things, a lot of other concerns. I don't know if you want to be bothered with them tonight or if you want to wait till July 6th when the court settles out and who does things. But as a neighborhood, an established neighborhood over there, we've got a lot of concerns. And unlike Councilman Waldman said, we don't have a choice. So it's not like we can go to Adelphia or K&G, which is somebody else. We are being told that DCN is going to be our new carrier, period.
Well, that was why I asked the question.
And they said that they did due diligence, but all of a sudden we were just told in a matter of about a week, oh, the cable's over with, and this is who's going to be your new cable supplier. And what really gets us is a conflict of interest, that K&G is owned by the same people that run the homeowners association over there, which is Michael Latner and his people. and they're the ones that entered into the agreement with themselves, and that really has a lot of citizens concerned over there. And it's going to affect a lot of people eventually, and maybe at the end of the day, they are the best solution for us. But we have a lot of concerns and a lot of questions that we'd like to get answered that we haven't been able to get answered. Paige Latner held a meeting which blew smoke and just covered up the situation as fast as they could. And I'm concerned about how quick this was rushed to council here tonight, because 2 weeks ago when I called, exactly 2 weeks ago today, there had not been one paper filed. I'd spoke to 3 different clerks in the back in 3 different divisions, and not one person could find any paperwork that had been, Curtis may have a different answer for me, and maybe the clerks overlooked it, but I gave them both names of DCN, which is called Digital Community Network, and K&G Communications, and they couldn't find paperwork on either one, according to the clerks in the back. And then last Monday when I showed up at the council meeting, I was told, boop, here it is, going to be here this Tuesday. And it really sounds like they're trying to slide this through, because I've got a little mole in the wall, and a quote that I was told is, hey, they called the county, and the conversation was, you guys caught us, what do we need to do to get this taken care of over here so we can get a franchise from the county? So there's a lot of concerns from the citizens over there, and you've got, I don't know, 5 or 6 of us here tonight that have a lot of questions about what's going on over there, that we have been, finance. How is this venture being financed? Who's financing it all? Is the developer doing it? I mean, we can't get any answers out of anybody.
In terms of response to your comment regarding paperwork filed with the city, KG Communications filed an application for a cable TV franchise with the city on November 23rd, 2004. Okay. And they provided this in accordance with the cable ordinance. I reviewed the application, and there was additional information that I wanted, and I submitted correspondence to them, and they supplied those. So they did provide all information that was required under the cable ordinance in terms of their cable application.
Okay, well, I don't know. Do we want to address these tonight, or do we want to wait till after the July 6th court hearing? I mean, I've got 2 pages of concerns for you guys, and I guess their representatives could answer if they want to, or...
Are your questions related to who the ownership of the infrastructure? Well, because I think that's in the hand of some judge that's going to hear it on the 6th.
Oh, no, not the infrastructure, I'm sorry. Who is in control, actually, of the company, because they're being represented to you guys as K&G, yet to us, as the citizens over there on that side of town, is DCN. A cable company. So who are we going to go to complain? And, if they're, what is their contract? And if it sours, what do we do?
Would Scott have an answer to that?
You want to step in on that?
I mean, I've got 2 pages of questions, so if I can work my way down and they can answer them as we go, or I don't know how you guys want to work it tonight.
Mayor, of course it's up to you, but I would suggest that at least maybe this last question you asked, but the series of questions you're going to end up working out with your provider, whatever that turns out in your agreement. Basically with the city, they've come and they've followed all the requirements for the city for a license agreement, franchise agreement, and we are awarding that now. For the city, they have some things they have to work out, I guess, with Adelphia, and I think they have probably some communication issues with some of the residents there, informing them as to, answering their questions. But we wouldn't be able to answer those. That would have to be them. So
well, my concern is we have asked them to answer questions, and we can't get answers. So that's why we're here before you guys, because maybe the pressure's on them, and they've got to answer these questions, and they have to answer them on public record and truthfully, because we're unable to get them over there.
Mr. Manager, is a way that you could call a meeting with representative from Keysgate and the KG and whomever, and just have that meeting and get some responses to these numerous questions this gentleman have. Because this is just a committee of the whole. Nothing is.
I understand that.
Nothing is being approved tonight. So could he arrange a meeting?
Yeah.
Right.
And you and your representative attend that meeting with the manager and representative from the company, and see whether you could get the answers you...
Yeah, but I think before this franchise is awarded, I think a lot of these questions need to be answered.
Well, I would hope that when we have it at the next council meeting, that you will come forward and say, my questions have been answered.
Well, unfortunately, I'll be out of town on the 20th, and this and one other important issue behind my house are both going to be on that date, and I've been fighting for the other one since last September, but unfortunately, on the 20th, I'm going to be out of the country.
Is there a way you can give us a letter with your numerous questions?
Well, I've got Angel and Chuck.
Have a representative to...
Angel and Chuck and several other representatives that hopefully that we can attend the meeting before I go out of town, which unfortunately is this Saturday. And, we will all be in agreement by then. But I think there's a lot of questions that need to be answered for the neighborhood over there and that the city should listen to before they do award this.
If you could, sorry, Mayor, if you could provide the clerk with your questions, she could provide them to each of us, and then we would have a little heads up as to where you're coming from.
Can I ask a question, Mayor? Can the license be transferred if the city establishes a relationship with one provider through a license agreement? Do they then have the right to transfer and or sell it out?
Transfer it.
Yeah, that's something that we're going to be experiencing now with the Delphi license. The Wilshire license, if they want to effectuate a transfer, they have to comply with the federal law, the Cable Act, and also the city's cable ordinance, and there's also provisions regarding transfer within the license agreement before you today.
So we're going to experience that anyway with the change in Adelphia.
That's something that you will be experiencing now within the next couple of months. But if KG decides to transfer its license to another entity, yes, they have to go through the formal transfer procedure, just like you're going to be going through from Adelphia to Comcast. And in response to another question that the resident had, we included in the customer service provisions that in Section 22 of the agreement that with respect to communications from the licensee to subscribers, that the licensee shall identify itself as defined herein. So upon the effective date of this agreement, all correspondences from KG Communications to its subscribers will identify itself as KG Communications, which could clear up some matters regarding who you're supposed to contact with and who the city is licensing in the city to operate.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Steve Shiver, Global Technology Partners. As you know, I represent M&H Homestead in various matters, and while I haven't been working on this one in particular, I do have some knowledge of the issues that as they have unfolded. One point, the franchise agreement that's before you tonight, as the attorney read into the record, has bonding requirements, has insurance requirements, has performance requirements, has a whole host of protections for consumers in the franchise agreement. And again, I think one of the last things that he read in the record, that the manager has the right to enforce that agreement at any given time. With the issue of Adelphia Cable coming into play in bankruptcy, there had been discussions, I understand, of Adelphia wanting to raise their bulk rates significantly. It is about price. And that issue, while it's still being determined in court on who and what and how that will come out of bankruptcy court, the franchise agreement is really something that you all do have ultimate power over. So I understand the neighbors' concerns. There's no question about it. And that meeting, Mr. Mayor, I think is a valid point if the manager would mediate that. But there are significant protections in the franchise, and you can verify that with your attorney, in the franchise agreement that you can at any time, if they're not performing, enforce. And I think there are built-in protections.
Thank you.
I'd just like to address two first of all, the relationship between KG Communication and Digital Community Networks. Digital Community Networks is our chosen person, our chosen company as the actual operator of the services for us. I personally was involved in reviewing all of the companies and doing due diligence on the ones that we picked. We eventually made the cut, and we decided that DCN offered the very best opportunity for the residents of Keysgate. Second of all, I feel it's important. 2 weeks ago, approximately, in fact, I think it was 2 weeks ago tonight, but The meeting was called of all the presidents and the boards of the homeowners associations of Keysgate. I was there for 2.5 or 3 hours, whatever the time was, made a presentation, as did Bob Miscavige, the person that owns DCN, and all the questions that were brought up that night were answered. I continue to say that we will continue to answer questions. We're not going to, if they have a series of questions, I'll give them my email. They may send them to me. Not that we're avoiding a meeting, but I stood in front of all the people that came to that meeting, whatever it was, 25, 30 people, and answered every question they had. We had another group today at 2 o'clock. I answered every question that they had, and I will answer every question that anybody else has. But if I can't force people to come to meetings. We were there, and we answered the questions. It was called by their association, not by us. And so if they want to submit the questions to me, they will get an immediate answer, and I'd be happy to share those answers with the council or Mr. Ivey or whoever you'd like to have as part of that.
Thank you, sir.
Can I just share a couple, the way that they answered the same question at their one meeting, and this is a quote out of paper that they sent out. It says, will DCN be acquiring Adelphia lines? This will be determined by the courts. And then a few minutes later, another resident said, who owns the cable lines? And it says, the answer was the developer. So those are the kind of answers we're getting from these people. We're getting the same question with two different answers. So we're trying to get these questions and answers, where they're one and they're consolidated.
Well, I think once you all sit around the table with the manager, you get some definitive responses.
Mayor, we'll work on putting that meeting together.
We'll arrange that meeting.
Getting everyone together and try to get that cleared up.
Very good.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Angel Lazo, 1400 Southeast 23rd Drive. I'm actually president of one of the boards at Keys Landing, and I attended that meeting, and actually I want to give you some perspective on that meeting and how it happened. This information is being put out through the Keynotes, which is a publication from the association, which is still controlled by the developer. And I would like to give you some perspective because it all sounds very nice and dandy here, but that publication is given in newsstands. It's not delivered to people's houses. It's a little publication. You pick it up at the guard gate if you have a chance, if there are enough. And I pick it up every month because guess what? That's the only way that you find out anything under the association. I'm on that board. I'm a president of the board. I don't get told any of this stuff firsthand. I have to find out just like everybody else. And the reason we had that meeting was because I have 198 emails from everybody in Keysgate and growing every day. And I said, I scanned it and sent it to everybody, so it became an issue. That's the way that the developer and through the association is communicating to us. And I'm a president of Keys Landing. I've been told we have no power. We essentially are powerless, right? So we can't do anything about it. So what I'm saying is this meeting that we have, I hope that we can get some more answers than what we've been getting because there is no communication. And we are the residents, and that's why we come here, because we expect you to protect us against the interests of developers. Because they have the right to make money. They can make all the money they want, but our interests are important. And the notification factor, how do you notify people that something as crucial as internet service, cable service, and all your communications needs are being changed like that? And that, through Keynotes, is that the way that we're being, notified of such a big change to our households? I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's right. And if that's the way they're going to be doing business, I don't think you should grant a franchise license. Because if that's the way they have no interest in giving cable service outside of Keys Gate, because we're a captive audience. Many people have satellite dishes. However, through the association dues, that's how they're making their money. Because they're going to have a captive audience. If you can have a dish network, but you're still paying for cable. So, in essence, what I'm saying is, I have Adelphia internet service. It is very fast. megabits per second. It's great. They can't give me a price. DCN's website is a joke. Okay, you go to their site, and I even told Mr. Miscavige that. You've been around since 1999, DCN. We're going to be their biggest customer. So what I'm saying is, I told him, you are not up to the level of Comcast, you're not up to the level of Delphi. Is this the kind of people we're going to be having business here in Homestead? And we have no choice. We're it. We are the captive audience that they want. And I really, really hope, and I'm praying every night that they don't get the infrastructure in the established communities. They can do whatever they want with the new communities they're building, but I really hope they don't get it, because that's going to be July 6th will be the date. And I hope they don't get the infrastructure, because I severely doubt they're going to tear up our neighborhoods and put in new cable. That's a lot of investment, and guess what? I don't think they're willing to do that. So, thank you very much.
Well, we have a commitment that they're willing to meet and answer all of your questions, so we expect that to happen. Yes, sir. Mr. Hodge.
Go ahead. Can I ask one thing?
Yes, sir.
Charles Albright, 437 Southeast 22nd Drive, Homestead. One of the things that you brought up tonight that we weren't privileged to is that there's a requirement, I believe, of 3,000 subscribers. Am I correct in what you said?
They're required to provide service to 3,000 subscribers 1 year after the effective date of the agreement.
Okay. Now, you've just been told that Mr. Latin and his group, because you have to understand, Paige Latin is the president of our association. Mr. Latner is the finance for this cable operation. Okay, so she signed a 10-year contract with somebody who was on her board. Mr. Latner is part of the association board. Now, like you said, we're a captive audience. They knew that they had their 3,000 subscribers before they even came to anybody. Because, like they talked to Councilman Walden here, we don't have a choice. There's 3 different cable people in Homestead, not in Kingsgate. They will be the only one in Kingsgate. Now, if I had a choice, I would say, I want a Delphi. Okay, yes, they're going to raise the rates. But they wanted to have a tier step rate increase. But if you notice, when they went to Dade County, their rate was right up there with Delphi's increased rates, $14.95, I believe. So we're not getting a break on anything as far as cable cost. What we have here is a great conflict of interest. We have somebody in the association selling a cable subscription to the same person who is financing the cable company. That isn't right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Lawson?
I have 3 questions on the terms of the agreement. First, it is a term of 10 years. Is that customary, a 10-year term?
Excuse me, your cable ordinance allows for a term of 15 years. This is a 10-year agreement. The agreement you entered into with STI in October 2003 is for 7 years with the possibility of a 3-year extension.
And the existing Adelphia agreement?
It's a 15-year.
Is a 15 as well?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's right in the range with the others. Also, the annual fee per subscriber. How does that compare to some of the others? I mean, what concerns me is there's no escalator provision. It's the same thing today as it might be in 10 years. The $2 per subscriber per year in addition to the other payments?
It's similar to what we required from STI, and I have the agreement there. I can tell you exactly what they're paying as well. They're paying an annual contribution of $2 as well. And under Florida Statute 166046, it's called, we refer to in industry as the level playing field statute, where there's specific provision that no municipality or county shall grant any overlapping franchises for cable service within its jurisdiction on terms or conditions more favorable or less burdensome than those in any existing franchise within such municipality or county. And we're in accordance with that based on the term and the amount of subscribers for this overlapping franchise, since STI and the potential cable licensee KG service areas overlap.
So I guess what that means is if we didn't extract enough from the guys that came first, we have to live with that deal with these guys. This provider.
Not exactly. There was all different things that take into consideration in terms of the term of the franchise, capital support, the build-out requirements. There's no really set formula, but more or less similar terms.
And finally, how did we arrive at the additional contribution of $200,000 to the city over that 10-year term?
Under federal law, we're allowed to negotiate for in-kind services, also under state law. And this amount was negotiated by our office with KG Communications to provide this. STI also has an amount that they're paying the city as well for access channel programming. And it's something that we're also going to require in a future cable franchise agreement with the new entity that's taking over the Adelphia system, Comcast. So that's the figure that we came up with in terms of what the needs were from city staff and what other information that we got, and we came up with that amount over the 10-year term of $200,000, which is consistent with other capital contributions in jurisdictions in the similar size. It's also based on how many subscribers they have and how many they will have within that time period, and especially with the build-out of the city of Homestead and development.
Finally, I guess in terms of a utility, 3,000 subscribers would seem to be a small customer base. We required 3,000 within the first year, and then they get another 9 years to do the additional 3,000. That doesn't seem to be really cost effective for the provider, which to me is in effect a utility. They're providing quasi-utility services, and I'm wondering why we aren't, as a show of their efforts into the community, why we aren't requiring more subscribers evenly paced over that the remaining 9-year period, rather than just 3,000 more in that final 9-year period.
Pursuant to the agreement, within 5 years, within 4 years, they're required to have 6,000, and then if they want to have, obviously, the more subscribers, the more revenue they're going to generate. But that's the build-out schedule. That way by granting this license, we're committing them to actually building out, and just not granting a license to them, but requiring them to actually have a certain amount of subscribers by a certain time frame.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
We also had a build-out schedule. We required STI as well in the agreement, which is similar to this one.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Lawson.
Could I make one?
Yes.
Mr. Lausner asked about a 10-year contract. That also falls as a very convenient number for these people, because if they'd gone over the 10-year date, Statute 720 of the Florida law says that they would have had to disclose and put it up for the association's vote to give it an okay. So I think that's why they stopped right there at the 10-year date, and I just wanted to bring that out into the open too.
Thank you, sir.
Mayor, can I ask my question?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Hodge.
I just have one more thing to say.
Mr. Hodge at the floor.
Sure. This would be for the attorney, and what my question would be here would be understanding the fact that there will be some litigation going on between KG and Adelphia, and then at the same token, we have Comcast overtaking Adelphia or transferring the rights. Does this create somewhat of in other words, are we putting this agreement like the cart before the horse kind of?
Actually, this is something that we brought up with Adelphia earlier today regarding this litigation. It is before the bankruptcy court, and it's something that's going to be resolved prior to the liquidation of Adelphia's assets. The closing date on that bankruptcy court proceeding is January 6, 2006. So since Adelphia's in bankruptcy court, this is one of those issues where they're attempting to provide all those claims to the bankruptcy court. As far as this agreement's concerned, it's independent of that issue and that transfer process.
Okay. And so I would ask the next couple of questions just for the representative there. And question number one to me and for most important is what is going to be your workforce and where your workforce is coming from? Because I know you're not from Homestead, so and I am very preferable for Homestead residents. And also, based on my question to the attorney, with the transfer that is happening between Comcast and Adelphia, and you're saying you guys were in a previous agreement with Adelphia over some of the infrastructure that's currently there, and Adelphia is at this point licensed for the entire city. What made you decide, if there was a contract, was the contract based on this particular portion, or was the contract on the entire infrastructure that Adelphia have, or you guys just decided on you don't want the rest of it, you want this particular portion? In other words, what made you decide on the boundaries that you decided on? You know, what analysis, what came up with that? Because you're saying that you're going to be going to court and taking what rightfully belongs to you because of the contract that you have with Adelphia, but Adelphia is currently servicing the whole city, and you're just concerned with the particular boundary area, and those are the two main concerns that I have.
Excuse me. I'll try and answer those briefly. The one question is a long answer that I'll try and make short, because it really gets why are we in the cable business? Adelphia put the gun to our head 3 times last year. In one case, they threatened to immediately, if we didn't sign this contract that we were working on, they were going to take everybody from the bulk rate to the retail rate. A month later, they put another gun to our head and said, you either sign or we are no longer going to service Shores. And the third, in writing, they told us again, on August 18th, we either sign the agreement or again, they were going to go back to the retail rate. I don't like working with a gun to my head, and nor do the people that I represent. We were extremely concerned about Arbor Place and this whole thing. We were selling homes, we're getting ready to sell homes in Arbor Place, and we were concerned about whether or not Arbor Place would have cable when the time came. And we decided, after a great amount of investigation on my part, that the best solution that we could find, because we brought all these people in, we weren't comfortable with a number of them. A number of them didn't have the same franchise, had never done this kind of a job. Bell South, for instance, has told me they were 2 years away from being able to do this. Comcast refused to even talk to us. Now, partly it was because they were obviously working with Adelphia, but more importantly is they didn't have a franchise to operate here, and said, therefore they couldn't even talk to me. So we came with a solution that we're going to have to do this ourselves if we were going to guarantee that when people started moving into Arbor Place that they were going to have cable. Meanwhile, I was negotiating as hard as I've ever negotiated in my life with Adelphia on a 3-year extension of the current contract that would cover the bulk contract that would cover the rest of Keysgate. On approximately February 1st, Adelphia took that out of their hands and terminated the contract. At that point, we had to look now at 2,000 people, or 2,000 homes, pardon me, that are approximately June 18th, we're going to not have service of any kind. What were we going to do? When we began to make plans, we also went to court, but we began to ask Adelphia, what are your plans? Are you going to pull the cable out of the ground? Are you going to abandon it? What are you going to do? They wouldn't tell us. We went to court, and we're still in court trying to resolve that issue. But we were forced into this part of the business, and we're in that situation because we didn't have any choice. Adelphia took that out of our hands. The other question, I lost my train of thought there. I'm sorry. What was the... Did I answer that question?
Not really.
Oh, well, I don't know what else to say. Our goal was to make sure that the people of Arbor Place had cable. You asked why did we go into business? I thought was your question.
Well, the question was, I mean, the workforce one is more simple. But the question was, what analysis did you use to bring about your boundaries? Because Adelphia is currently servicing the entire city limits, and you've chosen a boundary within the city limits, and it's not the entire boundary area. So my concern was if you guys were even if you was forced into the business to service the area in which you guys build your homes and you want to make sure that the community is serviced, obviously that still is basically you were told us at the beginning that you were contracted with Adelphia on equipment, and some of this equipment was your equipment is basically what I got out of it, that you pretty much own the equipment, and you and Adelphia were in a contract on the equipment, and they were offering the service to your customers. And based on that, my mind was telling me that you're asking for a license agreement on a certain boundary, yet Adelphia serves the whole city. So what made you confine yourself in that boundary would be my question, because if you own Adelphia's equipment, theoretically, that they're servicing, then wouldn't you want the entire business and not, just looking at it from a business standpoint, I mean, when it comes to money, I'm greedy, so I would want it all.
Councilman, maybe I was unclear. The only issue between us and the lawsuit is the cable that's on the ground in Keysgate. It has nothing to do with their cable in the rest of the city. It is strictly to the 9 neighborhoods currently as part of the bulk agreement with the homeowners association. So we're not. It's not feasible for us at this time to think about going and building. Although what we've built in terms of a head end and that would take care of the rest of the city, to run cable every place in the city just wouldn't make economic sense. So therefore, we want to define our territory at this time to just the people that need us, that we feel the most, which are those in Keysgate, and who we need so that we can continue to take care of our residents.
Okay, and the second question was, where your workforce going to come from?
Yes, well, for instance, we just hired our first full-time person, our first technician. He comes to us from Adelphia, and he is currently living in Keysgate and doing a great job. And, the rest of whatever it takes to man this as we grow and will be local people, because most of what has to happen is technicians and installers and so forth. All of our cabling people were local people. I mean, the people that actually dug and are doing that kind of work. It's all, local contractors.
Can I ask a question, ma'am?
Ms.
Warman? Are you done?
Ms. Warman?
I'm sitting here and I'm listening, and I'm trying to. I'm sorry, sir. I didn't know if you. I'm sorry, but I'm listening and I'm trying to take this all in, and I'm hearing. I think I'm hearing that if you revised your boundaries to be the new areas like Arbor Park, like the pond, I'm just throwing a few things out there, associations that don't have the cable included in their homeowner docs, so that those homeowners associations that are already established could make their own decision and vote within their. I understand that that Keysgate is owned by. that Page is the overall. Is she the overall president? Is that what you call her?
President of the Keysgate Association.
Okay, but if you could take those boundaries away from the already established developments that already are in place, and then let you guys fight it out July 6th in court, whatever's going to happen there. But it sounds like the 3,000 homes that you would encompass wouldn't be hard to do if you would just revise your boundaries to include the newer places that aren't established already. Does that make any sense to anybody but me?
Well, I don't know if I can actually answer that except to say that currently our first and foremost concern is that the residents of Keysgate have cable. Adelphia has said they're not going to provide it starting June 18th, which has since been...
But sir, can I interrupt you? And I don't want to get in that tit for tat, but that's something I don't think the residents are fully informed. I don't think that they truly know that Adelphi maybe was going to, as you said, maybe not going to service them or going to cut off this or that. But that's something that you need to talk one-on-one with your homeowner presidents and the people in, I mean, your, I know like my mom lives in Center Gates. They have condo presidents for every street, and I don't know how it is, and I know Northgate has an overall, and I think others do as well. But I'm just saying that, you know, if I'm hearing that July 6th date is the major date, the major time that we're going to know one way or the other what's going to happen. But as far as just granting a franchise, if it was a franchise that was without, you know, outside of those already established communities, I don't think that you'd have people fighting you so much.
Let me say that if communications have been a problem, I'll do my best to try and correct those. This is a very difficult and very complicated issue because of a bulk service agreement, because of the way the whole infrastructure works, and to not include that area in the plan, because I don't think would make any sense, because again, if in fact Adelphia, let's say, wins, and what a win may be is that they don't have to tell us what they're going to do. Still, if the contract is upheld, and we think it will, they have 90 days to pull their cable out or abandon it. So it's an extremely difficult situation, as I said, complicated because of the bankruptcy court, complicated because FCC rules and so forth. What we're trying to do is ensure that at least on June 6th, or pardon me, July 6th, if the ruling is such that Adelphia is out, the court has already said they're to be off the property as of June 18th. Now again, that's a state, but that's a dual-edged sword. Off the property and whether they can leave their cable, but it has said you will not be allowed on the property. We can bar them from ever walking on the property.
But would that enable you for laying your own cable lines and servicing Arbor Park and the newer developments that are going in?
Well, I think Arbor Park, we are there. We have telephones and TVs currently operating on a test basis because we don't have any residents yet.
I was going to say, you don't have anybody watching them, but...
any residents yet, but I'd be happy to take you over here and let you watch some TV and call anybody place you want in the country. But...
yeah, I'm just trying to I see...
It would be very hard to carve out a section. Now, if in fact Adelphia won unexpectedly something and was allowed to stay there, which the judge has already said he's not going to allow, but let's say he reversed his opinion, then I would think that there will be new negotiations with the Homeowners Association, because we are certainly not going to go build a system on top of theirs if in fact they have a right to renegotiate a contract with the Homeowners Association, a bulk contract. That would just be nonsensical.
I think we're just forced to have to wait until the July 6th ruling and wait till the workshops, and
could I get
if that's the case.
some brief comments from these two gentlemen? We need to move on with the agenda. Yes, sir.
I'll be very brief. I feel like everybody's talking about me, and I need to say hello. My name is Bob Miscavige, 2073 Porter Lake Drive, Suite D, Sarasota, 34240. I'm president of Digital Community Network. My quick background, I'm a cable developer. What I do is help residents condominiums, homeowner associations find alternative to the cable companies. I've been doing that for 25 years. When people are looking for different rates, for better deals, for higher speeds and internet, etc., that's why they call me. We have thousands of people who are on our systems who we've migrated from cable systems where they wanted to cap the rates they were paying to services they wanted at rates they wanted. I didn't know Mr. Latner or what was going on down here until a little while back when I got called by a mutual friend who said there's a community that's getting beat up by the cable company in terms of being threatened to have their cable, one, either turned off, or two, not turning on new residents. I came down and advised the developer of the homeowners association that time that they didn't have to put up with that. There was an alternative. One alternative was a company like us, a private cable company, who could step in there and solve their problem immediately. Or number two, they could solve it more long range by getting a franchise themselves. I mean, they were big enough in terms of the area, the growth that was going on down here was a phenomenal business opportunity, and they ought to look at that. Over that course, the dominating issue that they've always had for us is how do we ensure that our residents have television? And along that line, we laid out a various number of scenarios that could be followed to ensure that people were never without cable at property. They made choices on those scenarios, and that's what we have been executing. We're in a position to service the property. We're in a position to provide what the property wants. Now, there's obviously some problems between some of the residents and the developer, but what else is new? The boundary issue that you were talking about earlier, Councilman, just reference to K&G, there is provisions in that document that council can request KG to go to other areas. Like any business, you've got to start somewhere. Do you start here? Do you start there? Do you start somewhere? It was just a place to start from, and in fact, a very good place to start from to ensure the viability of the company by starting in a place they had vested interest in, had massive amount of money invested in, and they're proposing to invest quite a lot of money to build a cable system in that area. The issue has never been about them spending money to build a cable system, a second cable system in Keysgate. It's been an issue of what is the impact on the residents? How is the least amount of impact taken? Well, in the contract that Adelphia had signed with the developer back when, there was provision for the developer to take over the system. It's in writing, it's in that document. That document is what's being contested and what they're in court on. That's going to be resolved. One way or the other, either the residents won't have to go through new construction because what they're under the contract belongs to the developer, and will take that on and operate, or they have to build, and the developer will build. The money to build it has never, ever been a problem. It's been the issue of the least impact on the residents. Our pricing on programming is better than they got from Adelphia. Our internet speeds are faster. It's better. It's a better product for a better price. I just wanted to clarify that as someone who's sitting here and hearing people talk about our website and other things. We've been doing this for 25 years. I can show you ways to do things to be better than the cable company. I don't want to be Comcast. I've never wanted to be Comcast. I want to give people the best return they can get for their money buying telecommunication services. That's what I've dedicated my life to. I love what I do. Simple as that. Thank you.
Thank you. This is the last comment on this issue. We need to move forward. Go right ahead.
One last thing I wanted to say was, Councilman Hodge one person they haven't hired is a web developer. But another thing I wanted to say was that we are a captive audience. We are being affected in a very severe way. I believe that this should be postponed till after July 6th, when that is going to be determined, that the lines are going to be either KG Communications. We've been told at that same meeting that there would be a contract. You see, now the developer would be forced through the association to negotiate a contract with Adelphia. Once again, Adelphia has an interest in having a bulk contract with the association because, once again, there are many people who are paying it even though they're using satellite, their dishes. So you see, all the established communities, you're going to pay it through the association. So we were told that we were going to have a bridge contract until they came in and dug up all our neighborhoods, right? But I'm willing to bet that they're not going to dig up our neighborhoods. That's a big capital investment. That is a lot of money. So what the best viable solution, I'm sure, is to hope that they win that case on July 6th, and from then move on. So what I'm saying is, please, take your time. We should take our time on this, not precipitate this decision and wait after July 6th, because I think that's the best time to know if KG Communications is going to own the lines to the existing communities. Thank you. One last thing is just, if we are going to have that meeting, when is it going to be, who's going to be invited, that kind of good stuff.
Well, I would say the people that are here, that are interested, are going to be invited. We'll have, certainly to coordinate with KG and our staff. And what we'll do is we'll try and coordinate all that and pick the date and time to meet.
Ask the manager one question.
Mr. Porter?
Let me just ask.
Well, I don't think I want to put both people in the room because I don't think we'll get a full conversation since there's litigation. You're not going to get full conversation there from the people. So the beef you have is with K&G right at the moment. So let's see if we can solve those things, or at least give you some peace of mind, or not, whatever comes out of it.
When it comes back, can we at the council have a map of the areas, the affected neighborhoods? Because Keysgate is a vast community. And because I know there's some areas that have homeowners associations where they're paying for it in their dues and some maybe don't. I don't know that. But I thought in doing this we would be able to create a competitive nature. I've lived in the villages for a very long time. I've had no choice but Adelphia. I can't tell you the number of times I would like to have changed. So if we can create a spirit of competitiveness, as long as we're not going from one locked-in source or supplier to another locked-in source or supplier, because I've been under that gun for a long time.
Well, again, I think the city is being kind of drawn into the battle between the Keysgate scenario, Adelphia, and the developer. By legally, this is a separate issue whether we give the franchise or not, independent. But I mean, I'm at a map, and
I'm asking you as the manager to help me get a grasp of what we're talking about, because I thought by having 3 possible carriers, 3 possible franchises, one being Adelphia overlapping the other 2, you could choose. I'd like to be able to make a choice in my neighborhood. If we're making a situation where it's the same old no choice, then maybe we need to take a look at it. At the appropriate time. Okay, yeah, at the appropriate time, please. But that's my question.
Now, let me ask the attorney. Based on the city ordinance on these franchises, have KG met all the requirement under the city ordinance that we have established several years ago?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, as I said earlier this evening, that they filed a cable license application with the city on November 23rd, 2004. We reviewed it. I reviewed it myself. I had some issues. I sent correspondences to KG Communications, and they provided that additional information, and they met the requirements under the ordinance as far as what is to be required in a cable franchise application. And I think we had a meeting a couple months ago where representatives from KG came, and we had an open meeting with the city manager regarding their cable license and moving forward with negotiations.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I know you said last comment, but can I just make one observation? This is not new to the development community. STI is a known fact, is a subsidiary or closely held by Lennar. There are other developers in the Keysgate community that we have sold property to that I know that are in the cable business themselves. So as cable companies have been bought up, have failed. I mean, Adelphia, you see their CEOs bankrupt and being convicted of different things. There have been smaller companies that have sprung up. That's what the American enterprise is all about. The discussion that you have, the homeowners have a very valid point, but the contract that is being dealt with now by KG and Digital Community Networks is something that was done years and years and years ago. This is not an issue that, I mean, Adelphia came and they had a gun to the head of the developer. We're going to either increase your price or we're going to turn you off. That's documented. So, I mean, I hate that there seems to be such animosity between the groups, and I think a little better communication is warranted. So I would hope that we do have that meeting as quickly as possible, because the other communities that we do serve, or going to continue to serve, is under this franchise agreement, and we have to have that to move forward.
Thank you, sir. No further questions. Any final comments from council? Is there a motion to move this to the council agenda?
Was there going to be a excuse me, Mayor?
Yeah.
Was there going to be a meeting before it goes to the council?
We'll try and try to get everyone together. That'll be our goal, to do it before the council meeting, so we can report on that to the council.
Will this be a consent agenda item, or?
Well, no, it's going to be a resolution anyway, if we had to do it, and so it wouldn't be on the consent agenda.
And we'd want to get an update from you, Mr. Manager, on the meeting to make sure that the questions that the residents have been answered, maybe not to their satisfaction, but at least the meeting took place, and we can get a report on that meeting. We appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
I'll move it, Mayor.
Move, Mr. Porter. Is there a second? Second. Second by Mr. Hodge. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Are we back to item 2A? 2B. Mr. Coker moved in the room?
2B.
2B, sorry.
Mr. Mayor, while they're going up, could I'm going to pull the item on the PCS, the tower. I'm trying to find it on my...
D.
That's 2D?
Thank you, yes. I had it underlined. No one...
You're going to defer it?
I want to defer that. I need some further discussion on that.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, the right-of-way issue that's on your agenda, I know that there are about 10 or 15 people, I think, here for that. They may be waiting to have that heard. We'd be happy to let them go first if you'd like.
Any objection from any council member to move on 2G and then come back to 2B? Any objection? 2G, right-of-way vacation of Southwest 149th Avenue, Oasis Put. Tab 7. Who got tab 7? Right-of-way vacation.
Mayor and Council, we have item tab 7. This is the vacation of Southwest 149th Avenue in the Oasis Plan PUD. Plan unit development. If you can look at the map which accompanies it, essentially this is the piece of property which is behind East Lake, and which will become part of Pod K of Oasis at the next council meeting. We need to vacate the road first, and the next council meeting the PUD comes up. This is an area where for practical purposes, the other half of the road was vacated a long time ago when the East Lake was done, and this is just completing the second half, which is on the east side of the 149th Avenue. We have discussed it with the other department heads and with other utilities. There's nothing in those areas that we need to worry about. We've also indicated in talking to the utility department and Public Works that we've asked for, and the developers agreed when you see the resolution come next Monday for a 10-foot easement along the edge. This gives us future flexibility. I don't know what else I could ask at this point in time. We have contacted, or the developers contacted the neighbors. To the best of our knowledge, there is no objection to it. Somebody may say something different, but that's what we understand going into tonight, sir.
Any comments from council?
I'll move it.
Moved by Mr. Laws, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Porter. Question? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, we'll go back to 2B.
Okay, we're back at 2B, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir, and it's my understanding, and the council could correct me, that we have
Are we ready, Mayor, for...
Yes, go ahead, but just...
Okay, I turn this over to Rick and Susan, probably.
As we mentioned earlier, there are a number of pieces of paper that each of you have. We can address it in any particular order. The memo from P&Z basically indicates what staff has said the last time we were here, that after we've gone through with council's input and P&Z's input, what we have now is the PUD ordinance. And staff's recommendation is the approval of the proposed code amendments with the exception of section 3457, parentheses 3, which adds maximum density requirements for areas zoned as PUDs. Staff finds that the PUD density will be better determined by the underlying future land use classification, that further constraints on density and percentages of land uses within the PUDs would deter the use of the PUD zoning as a tool of redevelopment throughout the city. It was left in there because at one point in time, council had indicated that they wanted us to look further at this issue. Basically, staff has looked at it, our consultants have looked at it, the P&Z board has looked at it, and recommended 4-0 on the 18th of May to drop that issue and then continue on with the rest of the ordinance. So I wanted to bring that one up first if we want to either get that out of the way, or we can go to Ms. Garner's memo, which indicates certain items, or we can go to the little handout which indicates the items that the council had brought up before when we met and what the resolution of specific items are. And also we obviously have Mr. Coker hanging in the wings over there to give us some of his put as well. So we can attack it any which way you'd like,
let's
sir.
look at section 30-457, 3, the one that you have asked to...
What page is that, Mayor?
That's on page 14/15, ma'am.
14/15. That was a major discussion at the last council meeting. I think we need to discuss it, then we can go to the other areas. But that was a major one. I know Mr. Losner had some concerns about it, that we need to eliminate this, but put something in its place, I think was your comment, Steve.
That's correct.
So let's open up for discussion. Steve, you want to tackle it at this point, or any other council member?
Okay, all right, well, thank you. Caught me off guard there. Now, my concern at our last meeting was that if this were removed, I felt there needed to be something put into place to establish some sort of cap, some sort of what I would call actual residential density or net residential density. That means, I think implicit in the designation PUD is a meaning of a mixed use of some sort. And we've seen a lot of situations where a component is taken out of the residential acreage and those units allowable in the commercial area, and what the area is being used as commercial, are being moved over into the residential component of a PUD, resulting in actual residential density of far more than 6. Rick, you look puzzled. If you take 5 acres of a 20-acre PUD and make them commercial, but you're still entitled to the, let's say, 30 units or 50 units that would have been on that 5 acres of the commercial portion of the PUD, and slide them over into the residentially used area, you in effect are creating density far in excess of 6 and even 10, was my concern. And I wanted to discuss making sure that if we're going to go into these smaller PUDs, that there is in fact some sort of mixed use, and striking a sort of balance between sliding all of the units that would have been allowable on the commercial component over into the residential component. I guess I'll just cut to the chase. And I played with some numbers, and my feeling would be that an actual density of 12 in that circumstance is probably a good, I've heard suggestions of 20, we've seen 15, but for my preference, if you take and you make the actual density in a true PUD 12, if you've got some commercial use there now. How to craft that?
Okay.
I don't know.
The best way I could answer this, sir, it may not answer your question for tonight as far as crafting in additional words. We feel that based on the way this is written, and we've got it set up to allow for multiple uses, we have a couple of paragraphs that they have to have the specific one I'm going to look is in page 19 that talks about external compatibility. All land uses proposed in the PUD must be compatible with and not create or be subject to undue adverse impact from existing and planned uses of property surrounded by the PUD. We feel like this is the ability to make sure that we aren't sliding everything over one corner and then make that corner, using your example, make that corner that much more and doesn't fit with what's around the area. The other thing which is, it's hard to look at, and I apologize for putting it in that sense, this thing has been written with a couple of almost opposite viewpoints in terms of what we're trying to achieve. And let me try to explain that. Because of the way council has perceived the PUDs in the past did not give us enough open space or allowed too much for the lakes, we basically have crafted this thing to essentially give it more teeth so we'll get more back as the minimum. Now, one of the things you're kind of giving up for that, in a way, is by not defining the specific numbers, but we have all the paragraphs, as I mentioned last time, in the end of the ordinance, which basically boils down to a simple thing. If it comes forward and staff, first of all, doesn't like it, feels that it is against what we're trying to do, it will then go, at worst case, to P&Z with staff's negative. P&Z has exactly the same abilities and options to say, that's not what we want, that's too intense, it's not intense enough. If you want me to give you this here, you got to give me there. There's a lot of give and take, and if they get past that, or we get into the juncture where we can't get across that, it comes here, and this council has exactly the same ability. And right now it's being built into a certain degree on a case-by-case basis based on how they bring the thing in. We still feel seriously the underlying land use will give us the original density. Now, if they play off of that, we again will have the ability to look at it to make sure that they aren't sneaking something around the corner. But staff is quite comfortable, and then we need to make council quite comfortable, that that can work. Now, worst case scenario, if this doesn't work, since it is an ordinance, we bring it back, we adjust it again. It's the best thing I can say at this juncture. I think that this does take care of most of what we're trying to do.
My concern is if you unplugged this subsection 3 as presented and continued on, that unless a PUD was in the busway corridor or was designated MRU or PMU, they would be limited to 6. And I think that's true. Somebody behind you shaking your head, yes, that unplug this provision we're talking about. Take this paragraph out of the mix. Without that, except in very limited circumstances, there would be no right to go beyond 6.
No, sir, I don't think so. You have and again, please, staff, help me out as well. This one, maybe Mr. Corker to help me as well. If you have the medium densities, that allows you, I think, more than 6. I think it's up to 10.
Now, but reading this section, I think he's talking the maximum density of residential development should be as follows. The busway corridor and areas designated as downtown mixed use up to 15. 2, areas not listed above, which are designated as medium density, up to 10.
Your staff has interpreted that a little bit different than you read it. I read it like you read it. Your staff has interpreted, because we had this discussion, Dick Coker, we had the same discussion at the P&Z board, and the way it was interpreted is that the PUD designation is not a wholly residential designation. So it doesn't fall within number 4, all residentially designated areas of the city. A PUD is not in that category. So if you take out 3, I think the position is then this section doesn't apply to PUDs.
And then 4 doesn't apply.
And then 4 doesn't apply. Yeah, none of this section applies. I would feel more comfortable that if instead of 3, the way it's written now, that you would just put in PUDs, the maximum density will be determined by the land use plan. What Rick said in terms of the PUD is exactly what we've been saying for a long time, is that in a PUD, you have total discretion. And with that discretion, you and the developer both have a lot of leeway up and down. This new ordinance reduces the leeway you have by requiring a lot more of the developer, but still, in order to get any give and take, you've got to have some leeway on both sides. But it's ultimately your choice, because there's no entitlement to a developer to anything in a PUD, and that's why you don't need any artificial cap for PUDs, because there's no entitlement. With the other zoning districts, there is an entitlement. If the zoning district says 6 units to the acre, that developer is entitled to 6 units to the acre as long as he meets the other requirements of the Land Development Code. But there's no such entitlement. If you don't like a PUD application for virtually any reason, you can vote no, and there's no entitlement. And that's why the flexibility is important. That's why your staff is recommending that flexibility. And what we would ask you to do is to remove 3 and just put in a sentence that says, in PUDs, the density is determined by the comprehensive plan. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I address the question? I do agree with what Mr. Coker is saying about the flexibility. That is the hallmark of the PUD, trying to get something better for both of us and create a win-win. I just need to correct a little bit about how 3457 actually reads. 3457, which is the maximum density provision of your code that is in front of you, regulates by the designation that's in the comp plan. So these listings here, this DMU, this MRU, PMU, those are categories from your comp plan that determine the use of property. And as you know, every property has 2 classifications. It has the plan designation, and then it also has a zoning category. PUD is a zoning category. So 4 does apply. The fact that it's PUD, it makes no difference, because it's either residentially designated or it's not. It's got an MRU, it's got an LRU, it's got whatever of our comp plan designations that provide for residential use, or it doesn't. PUD is a zoning district, so this language doesn't address PUD. But what Mr. Coker is asking you to do as number 3, if you look at page 28 of the ordinance that's in your packet, number 1, under section 30-571, says exactly that. The comprehensive plan land use designation shall govern the maximum density permitted, as may be further limited by the provisions of the section you're looking at right now. So the general rule is, and it says in this ordinance, that the general rule is that the land use category will tell you what your maximum density is. So staff's position, as I understand it, is you may have many different circumstances. You may have a piece of property that's partially MRU, which is medium residential under your comp plan that allows 10 units to the acre, and partially light commercial. There, I think staff is saying that the maximum density would be that 10 units per acre that's allowed both by the underlying land use and by number 2 here. Number 2 of 3457 allows the MRU area to have 10 units to the acre. The concern that we hear Mr. Losner expressing is that that can then be averaged over the whole property, so that the density that would be attributable to the commercial is lumped over with the residential. And that is, that's a policy choice for you, whether that's a concern or if you want to allow that averaging to take place. I hope that clarifies it somewhat.
But I'm confused. But I'm confused. In the example in which you have a piece of property in which is half commercial and half residential on the land use plan, and it's zoned PUD, would, if you take out number 3, would number 4 apply and restrict it to 6 units to the acre?
No, because it's MRU in the hypothetical that we discussed.
Well,
and number 2 applies to MRU. If it was a combination of LRU, which is your low category with 6 units per acre, and a light commercial, then you would be limited to 6. You would be in that number 4 category.
So if it's designated as medium density,
number 2 gives you your full 10 units to the acre. Yes.
Susan, if I might, where I was coming from is I was viewing this subsection 3 as a bonus provision, if you will. Or it can come from the position that unless you fall within paragraph 1 or 2 for 10 or 15 units, it was 6 across the board. But if you do these enhancements and assign these different percentages of uses, we may allow you to go up to 10.
And it could have had that impact with regard to a PUD being proposed on land that's designated low residential and would only be in the 6 category. It would not be needed, it would not be applicable, short of making it applicable. Number 2 could handle the situation where you have MRU property.
So if you eliminate 3 and have the density controlled by the land use plan, if in fact you have a piece of property that's medium density on the land use plan, then that number 2 would control.
Yes.
And then, I'm sorry.
Right. Ms. Walden?
I'm sorry. And then, Susan, on page 20, under density intensity of development, doesn't that further, on number B, where it says within the maximum limitations of the comprehensive plan, the permitted residential density and intensity of use in a PUD may be adjusted in consideration of the following factors? And then there's some factors, doesn't that further?
Exactly, and as Mr. Chandra said right before that, the page prior talks about external compatibility. So when you've got the issue of what's happening at the edge of the PUD and how it affects what's next door, in number 7, there's additional constraints and qualitative limits, maybe not number limits, but qualitative limits you can apply.
According to this, I mean, that would give us the flexibility if we had some mixed commercial and, residential mixed use there, that would give us that component that we need. Are you on the, do you have the page that I'm?
Yes.
I don't think it could take you beyond what the comp plan would allow, but it might give us room to maybe do something less than what the comp plan allows.
Exactly, but there's that flexibility if need be.
So as the staff, as Susan has explained, if you remove 3, you have really done what the P&Z has recommended and the staff has recommended, is let the land use control in a PUD.
The density.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I had asked that we have the land use maps brought in because that language raises a big red flag with me, and as over the last 3 years, we thought we've reined in density, we're finding that there are inconsistencies between zoning designations and land use and comp plan densities, and I'm fearful that we might be unwittingly finalizing the gutting of the 6 unit per acre rule that we implemented and then whittled away at for the last 2 years. So even with LASIK, I can't really make out what those designations are, Rick, so if you could, because, and I guess we should be concerned about potential infill areas and some of the smaller undeveloped pieces. Certainly the big PUDs are finished, and while he's doing that, we talk in terms of flexibility, and I'm one for kind of a somewhat more of a strong-armed position, because, there will be future councils who may not show the restraint in granting density that even we've exercised, and it may be, Katie bar the door, as they say, in numbers of units. And still, even if we can reconcile ourselves to pulling this out, I really think we need to somewhere, somehow get a handle on that. Well, no matter what you do, if you're moving units from this corner of the PUD to the other corner or the other area, you still can't exceed an actual density of X. And I don't know what X is. I think that's really something we need to look at as well.
Well, I think as currently drafted, X is that maximum under the comp plan. So if we're talking about a 10-acre parcel and it has an MRU...
But is that for the actually used as residential or the whole PUD?
It's the overall PUD. That's your issue about the gross versus net.
Yes.
Which is another policy choice. I recognize that.
Whole other sub-issue.
And I think staff is saying they think that averaging is okay and you have a concern with it.
And we have the final say.
Yes, sir. That's the big, back to the mic.
Again, that's the biggest thing that I would like Mayor and Council to realize. And I'm being a little philosophical, and I apologize for that. There's no perfect world anywhere. Really, there isn't. What we've done with this ordinance, and I really will say at this point, without that one paragraph, is to try to define again what Council has mentioned, that if you're in the bus area, you get 15. If you're in the MRU, you get category numbers, you get 10. If you're in regular single family, you got 6. Those are still basically the same things. The only way they can really change that is to bring in something that they need to prove to us that it's worthy enough for us to look at it differently. Now, everybody mentioned if you get a piece of property that's part and part. There's a paragraph in there, I think on page 19, Susan, I'm not really sure, where you mentioned that if the thing is 50%, the land use is 50% commercial and 20% residential, similar proportions have to be what they're bringing into the PUD. So we're not at that point saying, okay, you've taken this thing which is part and part, now we'll let you take the part you like the best, residential, and take that over the whole thing. No, the way everything is set up, they have to have residential and they have to have commercial. And it's got to be enough of a mix of both to match basically what was there as far as the underlying land use. And again, not so much Katie bar the door in the sense that they'll bring something else in, but what we're asking you to consider is that by having this set up this way, having these other paragraphs I'm referring to, have the ones at the end, we're really allowing it to be, and I hate to use the word always, as flexible as we can, but noting that the flexibility still is in your hands, that if staff comes forward and brings it to you, and that goes through a P&Z that comes to you, you can still say at that point in time, are you nuts? This doesn't fit because of. Now, by the same token, I'm hoping we get to that point. Staff will have first said, are you nuts? This doesn't fit. Before the developer gets through into DRC, before he gets to P&Z, somewhere at an earlier stage. And I realize that's asking to put a lot of faith in staff at this point, but we feel the way this is written, it gives staff enough ability to do all of that, and it gives you guys the ability at the end to say, we can still tell you to do it this way. And I realize they may not do exactly what you want, sir, but at this point in time, I really think that's the best way to go. Now, the other thing I can say is...
Because in your example, where you're taking 60% commercial designation and 40% residential designation, you are in effect, by creating a PUD, entitling yourself to units that would have been...
No. You still have to make that PUD... A good portion of it has to be commercial, and the other portion is residential. You don't get the residential number and run across the whole thing and back it up into part of the site. Your relationship of what happens for that commercial part has to be a function of what the commercial part is, and the residential is a function of what the residential part is. You can't conglomerate the two. It's not designed to say, okay, now I
Well, I think that's been the practice. I mean, on these new ones that have come in, where we've gone from G or ag to PUD.
No, I think...
Where they've designated certain areas as commercial.
Well, first of all, if you're going from a G, you're going for something that doesn't exist in the first place. And you're going to a PUD, you are rezoning as well as playing with the land use. And we've always said that we'd like for a PUD is not to be one-dimensional. So we've asked them to bring in at least 2 dimensions, preferably more. The 2 dimensions usually end up being some commercial and residential. The other part that we bring in through that thing is parks, and the open space, and the lakes, etc. So I do believe that we have been looking at the intent, and I think as P&Z and his staff, we've been doing exactly what's in that intent, because we keep on harping the fact that we don't want a one-dimensional PUD. And the example we're talking about was part and part, you're going to get at least that same 2. Excuse me. Anything else, Steve?
No, that's all for now.
Mr.
Thank you.
Porter?
On this paragraph.
Mr. Porter?
When they get through all this.
Now, I want to ask you something that doesn't have anything to do with this. Are we still going to have the executive session? Because the poor recorder lady is
I'm
out
hoping
there
that we could
Rick,
move this.
Rick, let me just ask one question, because one of the things that I think the PUDs have done for us has given us a little bit better quality developments than would be conventional zoning or zoning by right. And as we take these PUDs and go from 50 to 20 to 5 to whatever the numbers are, you have the opportunity to go back into to your blighted areas and encourage PUD developments that give some amenities that otherwise by right you would not get. If it's designated future land use medium density, by right they can do medium density or higher density or whatever the case may be. But if you had the flexibility to go in there and develop it as a PUD with your underlying land uses, you'd still, as the community would see, a better benefit, because the PUD, you'd be getting more out of the property with the PUD process. Correct or incorrect?
That is the theory, that they give more and we get more.
Well, that was what, looking at it as we downsize this thing, because when we think of PUDs, what we've dealt with 100-acre tracts, 500-acre tracts of property. And as we take these things down, now you have the potential for the developing community to go into a blighted area, have a 5 to 7 to 10 to 15-acre piece, take the underlying land use, and give a better quality product back to the community in a PUD, other than having conventional zoning overlay where you'd have not as many of the amenities come back. So that's the concern that I hope we can focus on as we go smaller, because the underlying land uses of some of these areas are fairly dense by comparison in the future land use. So by right, a lot of the density is going to be there anyway because of the future land use, unless there's a push to change the comprehensive plan. That's why when we spoke in the last meeting with specifically to Rich Stotts, going into the CRA, into the redevelopment area, the blighted area that we have, how many 5+ acre tracts potentially have the exposure to be looked at from a PUD concept? Because it's my opinion that the amenities given back do sort of offset, and the density may already be there by right. So if the flexibility is there, I want us to make sure that we keep that.
If I may, to some of your question, in the southwest area, without significant land assembly, there are only 4 locations that could meet the 5-acre PUD requirement. One of them is about 12 acres, and the other 3 are 5.5, 6 acres. I've done some thinking about how you could negotiate amenities on a 5-acre piece of property when you are probably not going to have a multi-story garage, where you're going to have some sort of drainage retention pond if it's developed as a single unit, and have land remaining to build either commercial or residential or some combination of the two on. And
I'm scratching my head wondering how you build both commercial and residential, call it a PUD, negotiate amenities, put in a drainage retention pond, a ground level garage, parking, and still have much of anything left to negotiate with. Unless you were going to be negotiating very high density in a multi-story unit where you could negotiate internal amenities such as exercise rooms and maybe even an internal hot tub area. I don't know what you could negotiate, because with 5 acres you don't have the land to negotiate such nice things as a swimming pool and a tot lot. I mean, there's just not enough land there in 5 acres to do a whole lot of that, to negotiate with a developer to get that they would put in as a condition of being able to call that a PUD rather than a traditional neighborhood multifamily development. And so going down to a 5-acre PUD, I think, is a good idea, because there may be some occasion to negotiate that. From a practical standpoint, how often it's going to happen, I really don't know at 5 acres.
Well, but then, you know, we're focusing a lot of effort on designing PUDs all the way down to 5 acres, and realizing that the redevelopment area, the CRA, could use some help, and I'm just assuming that along the lines of the PUDs, there's a practical benefit back to the community.
Absolutely.
Okay? So if we're going to be able to achieve a benefit back to the community through the PUD process and allow them to go to 5 acres, does staff have the ability to negotiate some amenity back to the community in a 5-acre PUD? Or could the developer put together a 7-acre block that would be better, a 10-acre block, where they could buy properties and demolish and redevelop? That's the only thing I'm saying.
If we look to the plan and the ability to deal with density in the plan such that we can negotiate density in a way that we could not normally in a PUD, in the redevelopment area where density is not such a serious issue as it has been over on the east side of town, quite possibly. My preference is I would love to see the assembly of land into 10-acre sections for a PUD, only because that gives you more land to deal with so that you can negotiate some more things. But I'm not opposed to a 5-acre PUD. I just don't think that there's going to be a whole lot of them unless they're multi-story and you're negotiating some internal amenities rather than external amenities. And to do that, you're going to have to allow more than 3 stories of construction to have room for those amenities inside, because you don't have room for them outside.
I'd just like for us to encourage the PUD concept in our future, whether they're as small a tract as a 5-acre piece, because I think it has been a better process than conventional walled, isolated communities where nothing matches and nothing is married overall. If you look at the Kendall development as opposed to some of the mix that we have where things are not blocked off, there's not single entrances in and out of a community. They're planned together. So I'd just like for us to be able to apply that into the redevelopment concept of some of the blighted areas that we have. And if we can do that through the flexibility of the PUD, I'd like to see us figure out a way to do that.
And I absolutely agree. I do agree also that there probably should be some minimal requirements, because one of the things that we have promoted in the plan is that you buy this piece of property here today and you develop it, you can have certainty that whoever buys the piece of property next door to you and develops it is going to develop according to certain standards, because you're not developing huge tracts where you can tell the difference when you go from one to the other. Sometimes you're going to be talking about neighbors on the same street. So by having certain minimal requirements that a PUD in the southwest area has to have, I think that's a good thing, so that whoever buys on either side of what may be a PUD has certainty that he's not going to be building according to Key West Old Cox style, and we're not going to negotiate Mediterranean on the PUD. Ricky.
So I think there are some bare minimums that if we have in that 5-acre PUD in the southwest area is going to be to our benefit. As a floor.
Right. Well, we talked about, in the last discussion, we talked about this percentage of development was possibly going to go out, because when we started going down to 5-acre blocks, and you started saying 35% this, 10% that, 12%, you're slicing the pie so thinly, there's nothing left to deal with. And at one point in time in the discussion, this was thought to be taken out. And if I'm wrong, somebody correct me.
Well, that's the recommendation from staff and planning and zoning.
Page 15.
The third, under the section we're talking about, that.
3457.3, yeah.
Yeah, what is left is on page 26 that talks about you need to have a mix. That's what Rick was pointing out. You can't have a PUD be single use. This is the provision that requires you to mix uses in a PUD.
In a PUD.
Okay, well, is 3 in or is 3 out?
Staff's recommendation is to take number 3 on page 15 out.
Take it out.
Perfect.
So let me interrupt you for a minute. We have an executive session that I'd like for us to deal with this evening. If there's an objection from staff, I'd like to refer this issue before the next council meeting back to Chairperson Amanda Garner for any further discussion and a recommendation. Of course, we can discuss it even further at the next council meeting, but I think we need to forward to the next council meeting. But time is of an essence this evening because we got an executive session on something very critical that we need to deal with. Can I get a consensus that, and I know Amanda did submit a memo to the mayor and council on her position on some of these remaining issues. If there could be a committee meeting scheduled under Amanda's chairmanship, I think we could move this further, and certainly we have 2 major issues to discuss before we approve this. There are 2 major ones from my consideration that I think that we need to look at. One has to do with the parking, was a major one, and guest parking requirement, and also guest parking from Amanda's memo. So I'd like to refer those other remaining issues to the committee, and certainly any council member have the right to let's bring this up again at the next council meeting to hopefully finalize it, but we have a critical issue to see that we need to address. Any objection?
Does that mean that, is there a consensus, you're asking staff for the second reading to have number 3 out?
That's my understanding. Number 3 is supposed to be out.
That's my understanding.
Okay, so the document you'll have before you, but I understood second reading was going to be next Monday. Is that not so?
Well, if it's not resolved, we may not have second reading. So we just want to make sure that everybody's comfortable with the document before we move forward on it. But there are 2 major issues, and one is parking that we need to really look at.
And we wanted to discuss the size of the garage. That's the only other issue we wanted to discuss.
And the size of the garage, yes.
Yes, sir.
You may want to contact the manager through Councilwoman Garner to schedule a meet prior to the next council meeting. Okay?
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you all. Is there any other burning? Yes.
Oh, okay.
Rick, can you take that, please?
Any other burning issues, Mr. Manager? Could we run through some of these other items before we end the committee of the whole?
Real quickly, item C, Charlie, the Homestead Miami Speedway time extension, tab 3. Again, in keeping with our management agreement with the track, they've requested that an extension of the time that they can run to operate major events later than 11 o'clock.
Moved by Mr. Porter, second by Ms. Wallman. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? What about 2E, Mr. Manager? Tab 5.
Tab 5 is a renewal of the lease with the nursery. It's a year term over by the Lucy Street substation, and we have the nursery person there.
I'll move it, Mayor.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Porter, second by Mr. Hodge. Discussion from council. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We dealt with the right-of-way. We on tab 8.
8. Here we're requesting basically to adopt the the Miami-Dade County Local Mitigation Strategy Plan. For us to have flood mitigation plan, the city would use the county's flood mitigation plan. That is what other cities do as well. I mean, it's about this thick. The developer owns it's too extensive. This is part of a program on the community rating system to help reduce flood insurance rates when we become part of this.
I'll move it with a question, Mayor.
Second. Moved by Ms. Roman, second by Mr. Porter.
May I ask my question, Mayor? Mr. Manager, how much of a reduction, I mean, do you know percentage-wise, or, I mean...
It will be a percentage, we're not sure. Sally, do you know the percentage? Is it up to 10, or...
On the rating that we get right now, we're at a 9, which isn't a very low rate, but hopefully we'll increase that and it will be a better percentage.
So 9%, it'll be 9%? What do you mean by 9? I can't.
Our rating is a 9 right now, which is a high rating. But this will help us
for homeowners.
Right.
For the record. Okay.
This will help us get a better rating to increase the percentage of savings to the citizens.
So it'll definitely be a decrease, and it'll be maybe 7, maybe 6, who knows? I'm getting this from behind you, Sally.
A 9.
Anyway,
they've indicated that a 9 right now is maybe like a $20 per year savings. You know, just an average.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Is there a motion?
Yes, sir.
Moved by Mr. Porter, second by Ms. Roman.
I moved it.
Properly made. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Tab 9, Mr. Manager.
This will be handled by the CRA, Rick Stouts.
Yes. We have been contacted by American Building Alliance, LLC, about a piece of property that the city owns on the corner of Northwest 3rd Avenue and Northwest 6th Street. Building Alliance, LLC, American Building Alliance, LLC, owns 3 lots in the southwest neighborhood that the CRA would like to have to assist us in the implementation of the Southwest Master Plan. And we're proposing an exchange with them for the lot that the city owns on Northwest 3rd Avenue and Northwest 6th Street for those 3 lots. If you look at your documents, you'll see that one of the lots that we're proposing to take sits immediately between a lot that's owned by both us and the county. So in assembling those 3 lots, we would be able to do something there. Another lot they own would allow us to have a 20,000 square foot contiguous area between property we own and property the county owns from some multifamily development. The 3rd lot just kind of sits off by itself. They would also be paying us $5,756. We use the tax appraiser's values to determine their value of their lots and our value of our lots, and we're just proposing, based on those numbers, an even exchange plus the $5,756.
I'll move this, Mayor.
Moved by Ms. Roman, the second by Mr. Hodge. Any questions?
Just a comment. I think it's a win-win
Comment?
from the city.
Thank you. Mr. Lawson?
I've said this before, Rick, and I want to remind you again. Things are going, price-wise, things are going, pardon the expression, ape wild throughout Homestead. And I think the numbers that you're using, and again, I've said, you know, in my practice, I see every day where the tax assessor's office is way out of line with what some of the actual values are. And I've sat here and I tried to run some of those numbers, and I want to thank Mr. Kruger for the handout. So that it shed a lot of light and supplemented some of the staff recommendation. I believe the proposal is to build 4 houses on 4 townhouses or 4 single-story condos on what was previously a single-family resident detached residential lot. And I understand there's some value in us somehow acquiring those scattered lots in the southwest section. But I cannot support approval of the construction of 4 units on that lot. And I think implicit in this approval, are we approving that? I don't even know that that is that zoned or master plan that would allow those 4 units on the lot by the school that we'd be swapping out?
I would have to defer to Rick Chandra that their ability to build anything on that lot is not a part of this deal. So we're not promising them 4 townhouses or 2 single-family detached lots.
That's the proposal that was circulated tonight. And,
that may be.
Conceptually, it's the proper thing to do for the city. I have no problems with the proposal that was circulated.
That may be what they're proposing to do after they own it, but that is not a part of this exchange in any way, shape, or form.
What's the underlying land use there on the 6th Street or 6th Avenue, 6th Street?
I'm sorry, sir, I don't know. I wasn't even expecting this item to come up other than just swapping the land back and forth. I wasn't prepared to go from there, and I haven't seen what anybody else is proposing, so if you've seen a proposal, you've seen something that I have not any knowledge of.
Okay. Well, all right, well, we'll move this forward and have that answer before our next council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Laws. Been properly moved and second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Tab 10, City's Subordination Policy Revision and Resolution.
Again, Mayor, this is Mr.
We've recently run across a couple of issues in relation to the city's subordination policy, where individuals have come in and wished us to subordinate to a refinancing of their first mortgage, and there were some things in the policy that were not very clear. So I have taken some time and reworked the subordination policy and have run it by our city attorneys who've approved it, and we're recommending that the subordination policy be changed as submitted. You have before you as it would lay out in a little bit better form, I think. That's numbered 1 through 12. Beside it, you have an underline and strike-through version so you can see what it was originally and what has been changed to.
This basically is the policy that we have been applying de facto, and when Steve Zelkowitz has been getting requests for subordinations, we've been basically applying this, and basically brings our practice in line with our written policy.
Mr. Mayor?
Ms. Swolman?
I think too that if we adopt this, that this will eliminate some of the problems that we had prior in Pioneer Village, and I think that certainly, and I know I asked for this a long time ago before Rick ever came on board, so I'm glad to see it. I'll move this, Mayor.
Moved by Ms. Rowland, a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Hodge. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Tab 11, busway construction.
Yes, Mayor. Yes, Mayor. On this item, as you'll recall, back in June of '04, the city had an estimate from the county in regards to the upgrades that we were going to have along the busway in 3 areas: the lighting, the actual bus stops themselves, and the fencing along the pathway to the city. We wanted to make it more compatible with the way the city would look and the ambiance of the city. At that time, the estimated additional cost for the enhancements was $436,425. We've been advised that the county is ready to go out for a bid, and they have recalculated what the cost of that will be, which has almost doubled to $812,677 to do the same thing to keep the ambiance that we were looking for before. It was almost double the price 2 years later.
Wow. Jesus.
Quick question, Kurt, and maybe we don't know this.
Okay.
Did they take into account the adjustment of our light standard? I think the first version that they priced out today is far more expensive than what is the current adopted standard, and I don't know whether that's been taken into account.
Yes, it has. The cost of the bus shelters went up significantly because of the rise in the cost of concrete and steel. They did a review of why the costs were different, and they equated it to the rise in the cost of their bridges. The cost of one went up about the same as what they estimated their bridges would cost and what they went up as well, because they've actually accepted bids.
This is priced out in 03, and I think concrete has probably gone up by 50 to 60% in that same time frame.
Absolutely, and so has steel. But they've actually received bids. They're not going out to bid. They're ready to award the bid. And they want to know from us tomorrow whether to proceed. Also,
Because they delayed the project, shouldn't they pay the difference in the cost?
I beg your pardon, sir?
Because they delayed the project, shouldn't they be responsible for the increase in cost?
In asking for them to do the alternates A, B, and C for the bus shelters, for the fencing, and for the lights, agreed to pay any additional cost between the base bid and our alternate. And we required them, when those alternate prices came in, to come to us and give us a chance to review them and decide, did we want to go with that alternate, or did we want to go with the base? So we can flop back to the base on any of these items. If we don't wish to pay the upcharge on the bus shelters, we can flop back to the regular county bus shelter and not expend any funds at all. If we wish to flop back to the regular county fencing, then we don't have to pay any upcharge at all. If we want to flop back to the regular lighting, then we don't have to pay any upcharge at all. In fact, the fencing came in less than they anticipated. So, yes, the lighting...
The base increase.
What we're talking about here is the difference, the enhancement, the difference between what they would spend if they put in the base and what we've told them we want to have. And yes,
is astronomical.
A significant portion of it is the lighting, and significant is the bus shelters.
May I ask a question? I don't recall that we ever had the choice of this particular fencing in the beginning. It was a wood fence or a chain link, and we had decided...
And that's the choices we still have today.
But don't we have the choice of this, the picture, this Cutler Ridge busway fencing, is that incorporated into the price?
No.
The reason I say is because the wood, eventually it's going, I don't care how much you buy pressure-treated wood. I mean, I'm dealing with it right now. I've practically replaced every section of my fence, and not only that, then then you've got the graffiti issue, which you have in every downtown.
Our options are the base bid or our alternate. That fence was no part of the bid for this part of the busway, because it is only used where there is a sidewalk adjacent to the busway. And at no place during this section of construction is there a sidewalk adjacent to the busway like there is on US 1 to provide walking traffic between US 1 and the busway where it's immediately adjacent to it. So we don't have the option under the bid to go to that style of fencing. At the city manager's request, I have secured from the consultant who handles the public information the cost of what that fencing would be. The only way that we could get to that fencing would be to accept the alternate or reject the alternate and then negotiate with the county to do a change order to the contract, because that wasn't bid out as an alternate. But the price of that fencing, according to the consultant, is $500 per linear meter. And today, Dan Wick drove from 280th Street to 328th Street along Flagler to get an approximation of that distance, and it was 3.9 miles. You multiply that times 2, because you got fencing on both sides of the busway. With the help of Ken Cockle, that was reduced to meters of 12,672 meters. When you multiply that times $500 per linear meter, you're looking at over $6 million.
Well, I'm glad we got that out of the way. We won't be getting any fencing like that.
So let's move on. Is there a motion for approval?
I'll move it.
Moved by Mr. Laws, is there a second? Second by Mr. Porter.
I just have to say, Vice Mayor Bell called me, and this was one of the particular items that had caught her eye and when she was out of town. But she looked at this unfavorably and would not vote for it, and she wanted to pass that on to Mayor and Council.
Let's send a letter to Katie and Moss about this and see whether we could get some additional funds from the county. This is doubling the price in 2 years, and they delayed the project, and now we're biting the bullet for it, so.
And in their last memorandum they sent out, they said we were holding up the project. In their last
because of the bid
upgrade, they update everyone and said we're holding up the project because of this.
On the good news side, because I know sometimes when you say that this document you did do this right the first time, which is when the council approved this, you had us add a clause that said that you had the right to review these bids when they came back, so if the bids were really high, you would have an option. And I know a lot of times, based upon old documents, we haven't had an option, but you put it into the document this time so that the council does have an option to say no here, which is, sort of the correct way to be doing business. And so at least you do have the option here tonight.
Sure. Let me just say this too, Mayor, and we also will realize more transportation money with the half cent. I mean, that's going to increase over time too, right, Manager? We're getting a bigger portion every year.
Let me also say the county has given us a deadline of tomorrow to give them an answer.
You have it.
You got it.
No further discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We have property donation.
Mr. Mayor, that's Rick's item.
On the corner of Southwest 4th Street and Southwest 5th Avenue, there are two lots side by side that face Southwest 4th Street. One of the lots is owned by the county, the other is owned by the city. Behind those two lots are 10 additional lots. They have been put under a purchase contract by Workforce Housing, a development partnership, and they are looking to build a mixed-use facility there on the corner of 6th Avenue and Southwest 4th Street. Retail on the first floor, housing on the second, third, possibly on fourth floor. To make the project work, they need the two lots that are sitting on 4th Street. Everything that they do is workforce housing, affordable housing, if you will. Everything they do is housing that is built for sale, not for rent. They have approached us about donating our lot to them. The county is going to be donating its lot to them so that they can make this project work. They would end up with 1.8 acres and would be able to build 10 to 12 commercial spots on the bottom and 27 or 28 housing units above that without requesting any additional or any bonus density. We are recommending that the city donate the lot to Workforce Housing with a caveat that it would have a reverter clause if things didn't happen, and that the value of the lot be credited against the cost of one affordable unit which could be purchased by the land trust that's going to be set up by the Empowerment Trust. So we would get something back for our lot. We would end up with by the time the county and the land trust buys it, credit toward one affordable housing unit that would be owned by the land trust, so it would not one day be priced out of the market.
And let me say, Rick, will be a major impetus for that community if we can get it done. That mixed-use development will be the first in many, many years. So I certainly support it.
I'll make the motion there.
Moved by Mr. Porter.
Second.
Second by Mr. Hodge. Mr. Hodge is waiting for development in the Southwest community. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Item 2N, tab 14, the Southwest Neighborhood Moratorium Extension.
Mr. Mayor and Council, staff recommending approval of 6 months extension to our current Southwest Neighborhood Area Moratorium. We placed a moratorium on the area in regards to issuance of certain development approvals, and we're running out. We've run out on that moratorium, and we're not quite there with the Southwest Master Plan. And if we anticipate we'll be completed with that and ready to go before the 6 months, and that way, the 6 months, we can cut short when we're ready to go.
I'll move with just one comment. This recommendation is going to follow the closure of the plan. If the master plan gets closed in 2 months, the moratorium goes away.
Right.
If it goes the full 6 months, then the moratorium covers the area.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Been properly moved and second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Under the finance item is the purchase of a substation circuit breakers, tab 15.
Mr. Mayor and Council, we had for you, as part of our development of our 2 substations, we're ordering the breakers from 2 different companies, low bidders, for the type of breaker. The funding will come from the loan that we have taken out to do so. Approximately $132,000 of the expense is credited to the EDA, but they have to approve it first. But we anticipate that it will be acceptable expenditure under the EDA grant of $1 million that we got. So we are funded to do this, and it's part of the construction plan.
Motion moved by Mr. Porter for approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Hart.
Question, is the cheapest the best? You sat there all night, I just wanted to ask you one question.
These breakers meet all the technical specifications that we had in the bid documents.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Been moved and second. Have it, Madam Clerk? Been properly moved and second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ms. Wallman?
Yes, Mayor, this is the agreement for AYSO and our city. It took us quite a while to get to this document, but with the help of our attorneys and the attorneys of the National AYSO Board, we were able to come to, I think, a good agreement. So,
Question, Madam Chairman.
yes.
Are you happy with the agreement?
Yes.
I'll make
But I will tell you, it took hours and hours and hours on the part of the staff and myself. I mean, it was a lot of work.
Move second motion.
So the motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye. One more piece of information to make your life a little more complicated before you leave. Mr. Losner had asked me a question regarding the option 2, and it would require a charter change in terms of the first election date. I checked it in the interim, there is a weird provision of state law that allows us to change an election date, notwithstanding our charter, by ordinance. So if you wanted to change, it gives you more to think about. If you wanted to change the date of the first primary, you could do it by ordinance. I know it's like a kid can go anywhere he wants to college. Why don't you just go low? It gives you more options.
Stick to option 1.
What?
You can stick to
Anyway, I just wanted to tell you because it does not require a charter change.
Too many options.
Too many options. Any further business? Mr. Hodge? Mr. Porter? No, sir. Ms. Wallman?
No, sir.
Mr. Manager? If not, thank you all very much for coming.
We just need you for a brief executive session in the conference room.
Sheila, could I have the PUD ordinance change part of this out? I'll pick it up on Friday or whatever. I just don't want to have to go back and mark them all.